to Wait One Legal Minute. We have been on a roll the last couple weeks with some very important, compelling conversation, necessary conversation. And I am just so excited about this platform. And I'm going to continue to share my thoughts, my opinions, my guests, their thoughts, their opinions with you. And I would love for you to continue to do the same. I thank you all for your support. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of the text messages and calls, emails as well, with topics or continuing the conversation with past topics. I want to again acknowledge the class of 2020. Just congratulations. It is such a memorable time. This is unique. It has been untraditional, but it has been special. I emphasize to my son that despite not having an opportunity to physically walk across a stage, this opportunity was much more intimate. And we had to be creative and we had to navigate. And hey, that's what life is all about. So why not start here? So congratulations to the class of 2020. Chase your dreams. Don't ever stop chasing them. Understand your passion or your passions and just keep exploring and learning and growing. And you will be successful in all that you do. So just wanted to salute the class of 2020 again, because they deserve it. I also mentioned last Thursday that I was taking a lighter topic, an opportunity to congratulate the class of 2020 instead of having another conversation about Ahmaud Arbery, but that I would revisit the topic, and that is what I'm doing today. On May 21st, William Roddy Bryan was arrested. He was charged with felony murder and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. So I just wanted to have a conversation about Mr. Bryan's arrest and what we think about how this will play out. Several weeks ago, when I first started speaking on Ahmaud Arbery, and this was prior to the actual arrest of Travis and Greg McMichael, I felt at that time and expressed to you all that the videographer should have been charged and arrested and charged as well, not just the McMichaels. And I am happy that he has been arrested. I will have to say that I am a bit concerned on the charges, and I would like to talk about that a little bit more. But first, I would like to share with you Wolf Blitzer's, he's not in the room, but he's reporting on the arrest of William Roddy Bryan. I would like to just share just a little bit of that interview with you all, because he talks about, and the legal analyst that he has on the show, Laura Coates, talks about the prosecutorial misconduct as well as the charges that William Roddy Bryan were the charges that he was arrested on. So I just want to share that interview with you and then have some conversation about that. If any of my faithful, dedicated viewers are on who practice criminal law, I would love your input on Mr. Bryan's arrest and the charges, because I think that this might come full circle and we might have some issues with the charges. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and listen to this interview, or this Wolf Blitzer's segment on the arrest of William Roddy Bryan. And remember, he is the videographer that filmed the McMichaels and the incident, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery by Travis and Greg McMichael.
We're following right now. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation has made another arrest in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, a young African-American man who was shot and killed while on a jog earlier this year. The fatal shooting was captured on camera and has generated outrage across the country. CNN's Martin Savidge is joining us right now. Martin, what are you learning?
Wolf, it was that video that changed the whole trajectory of this investigation. As you'll remember, for 2 months, the case was stagnant, and then that shocking video was released. It was William Roddy Bryan, the man who took that video, and he's the man who's now been taken into custody today, exactly 2 weeks from the time that you had Gregory and Travis McMichael that were taken into arrest. Now, the GBI is announcing that Bryan has been taken into custody. He is charged with felony murder. That is the same charge that Travis and Gregory received, but also he's been charged with criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. There had been a lot of consternation by many here who believed that Bryan, in addition to taking that video, had also apparently participated in trying to detain Arbery on that terrible day. And now authorities have moved on that. His attorney has always maintained that no, Arbery was just a bystander who happened to be a witness and captured it on his phone. And as we all know, it was that video that changed everything in this case, Wolf. But now he is in custody and in the same jail as the McMichaels. Wolf?
Yeah, we're just getting a statement in, Martin, from the attorneys for the mother and father of Ahmaud Arbery. And let me read it to our viewers. The family of Ahmaud Arbery was relieved to learn that the Georgia Bureau of Investigation has today taken William Roddy Bryan into custody. We called for his arrest from the very beginning of this process. His involvement in the murder of Mr. Arbery was obvious to us and to many around the country. And after their thorough investigation, it was clear the GBI as well. The family of Mr. Arbery is thankful for the diligence of the GBI and the way in which they tirelessly pursued the evidence in this case. We want anyone who participated in the murder of Mr. Arbery to be held accountable. A very strong statement from the family, Martin.
It is indeed, and they're right. This is something that they have been calling for from the very beginning. It's also been something that the supporters of the Arbery family have been asking for. All the protests that have been held have spoken to this very fact that they believe that Bryan was not just an innocent witness here, that he somehow was involved. Remember, he was named in 2 police reports, one of them in which McMichael himself, Gregory McMichael, stated that Roddy attempted to try to use his vehicle to block Ahmaud Arbery.
So I wanted to just pause here, and the police report that was made, that the statements from Gregory McMichaels alleged that Mr. Bryan used his vehicle to cut off Ahmaud Arbery in an attempt to I guess, facilitate with the citizen's arrest. I'm going to include in my comments the police report, because I think it is very important that we understand, and I will talk a little bit later on the charges for William Roddy Bryan and how the authorities make the leap from him just recording the incident and participating in the incident. And some of that information came directly from the police reports that were taken at the time of the investigation soon after the incident. So I've included a link to the police report so that you can see the statements that were made by Mr. McMichaels, the Gregory McMichaels, the father. Oh no. So I have had
Arbery on that day.
Here we go for the
There
rest.
was another report from authorities that suggested as well that he was a participant. It's interesting, there was a raid that was conducted, a search warrant carried out on the McMichaels home. That was on Tuesday of this week. We don't know what was found, but you have to wonder, could anything else found in their home have made them decide what to do with Bryan?
Very interesting. Martin Savidge has been doing excellent reporting on this for us. Martin, thank you very much. I want to bring in Laura Coates, our legal analyst, who's also been doing extensive analysis and reporting on this. What's your reaction, Laura, when you heard of this dramatic development?
This is extraordinarily striking, Wolf, because, felony murder is what he is being charged with. And that is important here because most people think to themselves, if you're not the one who actually fired the gun, then there would not be criminal liability. But felony murder is a doctrine that essentially says if you participated in the crime, if you were somebody who advised or encouraged or in some way helped another person commit a crime, even if nobody intended to actually kill somebody, the fact that you were engaged in a felony or a crime and there was a foreseeable risk that somebody could be harmed, you can be liable. And so what
I am also including felony murder, the link for felony murder, which is 1651 for Georgia, the state of Georgia. And you should also take a look at that statute. I included it previously because that is also the same charge that the McMichaels were charged with, or one of the charges that the McMichaels were charged with. They were charged with felony murder and aggravated assault. Mr. Bryan is not charged with aggravated assault. He is charged only with felony murder and the criminal attempt of false imprisonment. So Ms. Coates, Laura Coates, the legal analysis on Wolf Blitzer's segment, is explaining why Mr. Bryan was charged with felony murder and how you show felony murder. But I wanted to include that statute, and she is also going to talk about the false imprisonment. And I will also include 1641 for criminal attempt, as well as 16541 for false imprisonment. I'm sharing these statutes with you because there is always public outrage when these criminals are acquitted, when the state doesn't meet their burden, or when the jury just finds that they either haven't met their burden or that it wasn't enough evidence to convict on the specific charges. It's so important that we understand what the charges are and why sometimes it is going to be problematic. And you can tell that at the onset of a case because of the actual charges. So I'm going to let Ms. Coates, she's the legal analyst here that is walking us through the charges for Mr. Bryan. And as I said, I am including those statutes so you can follow along and cross-reference so that you understand and that you are informed and you know what the charges are and why we might have some issues with convicting on some of these charges. Good morning. How are you? Thank you all for supporting Tequila. I appreciate you joining the conversation. Ada, I appreciate you joining the conversation. You all know that I support you. I'm going to go ahead and continue the portion of Laura Coates' interview on her analyzing Mr. Bryan's charges.
What we're seeing here is a compilation, Wolf, not only what Martin's talking about, but remember, this is something about how that video that was captured, that very tragic death of Ahmaud Arbery, was actually more than, 4 minutes long. And people kept wondering, how is it that this man, William Roddy Bryan, was in a position to have his camera ready at just the right time and capture this moment? Was he somebody who participated? Did he actually cut off Ahmaud Arbery with his own car to try to keep him in one position to have this, what people are calling an ambush? That's what was being looked at. And it seems that at least the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, who recall, Wolf, only took 2 days to decide that arrest was necessary of these two men, Mr. McMichael, Travis, and Gregory, have now found that, look, there is reason to believe that at least there are allegations that can be supported that he participated in this crime and was not simply an innocent bystander. But of course, his attorneys will obviously argue that as a defense of felony murder, that he was simply in the right place for filming, but at the wrong time and was innocent.
And as you point out, William Bryan, who was just arrested, charged with felony murder, he's the one who filmed that incident. We've all seen the video by now. And at one point, he got into his car to follow Arbery. So what do you make of the way this all has unfolded over these past several days so dramatically and relatively quickly, even though there were, a couple of months between the time of the shooting and the time of the arrests of the father and son and now Bryan?
Well, this tells you the accelerated pace at which they were able to determine that there was probable cause to make these arrests. Imagine the comparison when it took more than 80 days for the initial two, the father and son, Gregory McMichael and Travis McMichael, to even be arrested. If they were...
Before we go any further in Ms. Coates' conversation about the because she's about to lead into the prosecutorial misconduct and or alleged prosecutorial misconduct. Before we go into that, I just want to draw your attention again to the evidence or what led the GBI to make the arrest of William Roddy Bryan. First of all, we know we have the police report, which I've included in my comments. What we don't know what the raid of the McMichaels home revealed, but it's my opinion that they found information in addition to the police report they already had that gave them the probable cause to make this arrest of William Roddy Bryan. Also, I am imagining by now they have seen all of both McMichael's phone, Travis McMichael, as well as Greg McMichael's. I am guessing that there were text messages between father, son, and possibly even William Roddy Bryan, because remember, he was there at the exact time that this incident occurred and just happened to videotape the entire incident while Ahmaud was just jogging. So, and I said this at the beginning when I started having this conversation about the incident. It didn't smell right. It didn't smell right that William Roddy Bryan just happened to be there, just happened to start filming while nothing was happening. And Ahmaud was just simply jogging. So I am guessing, in addition to the police report, which had the statement that Mr. Bryan cut off Ahmaud Arbery, in addition to that statement that was in the police report, there was also information or evidence that was revealed or uncovered or discovered at the home of the McMichaels when it was raided. And I'm also guessing that as the months and the weeks and the months go by and we get closer to trial, possibly we will learn more information about any communications that were had, which would substantiate the intent. Because remember, it is important that they show that there was an intent to commit these crimes, an intent to commit false imprisonment. You have to show that there was an intent for a crime to get to felony murder. The way that they're going to do that is to use these conversations that were exchanged via text, email, phone call, phone records leading up to the incident. So I just wanted to emphasize that is just a huge point and going to be so important to these charges to be able to develop a clear intent so that there are no issues for this jury and they don't have to make a huge leap to get to felony murder or get to criminal attempt of the false imprisonment. So I want to go back to Laura Coates. I'm going to let her talk now.
We're able to have all of this evidence closer in time to the actual killing of Ahmaud Arbery. One would believe you'd be able to draw the same conclusions even closer to the crime. So it tells you that there is the need for the Department of Justice, at least in part, Wolf, to review the prosecutorial conduct in this case to assess whether there was any bias and undue influence exerted to put a thumb on the scales of justice in favor of the McMichaels, in favor of William Bryan, and against the best interest of the family of Ahmaud Arbery. It'll all be crucial to look at this holistically. But what is true here is that they were not buying, for whatever reason, the GBI and the prosecutor now handling the case, that this was pure coincidence, that Roddy Bryan purely coincidentally was in the area at this time. And instead, it speaks to the fact that they think, rather than coincidence, this was someone who was complicit in the crime. And like Martin Savidge reported, you have to wonder, this coming so closely at the heels of having them search the homes of the McMichaels, what information did they glean? And did that even more so accelerate the decision to arrest Roddy Bryan?
Very interesting. And as you point out, there are calls now on the Justice Department here in Washington to get involved in this case. Would you expect the Attorney General, Bill Barr, to take any action?
Well, this would come down fundamentally to two factors. Number one, it depends on what type of crime they are investigating, whether it's the Civil Rights Division looking at perhaps a hate crime. Remember, Georgia does not have a statute for hate crime prevention. Is there evidence to suggest that there is a racial motivation or a profiling that led to the death of Ahmaud Arbery? Many would speculate that is indeed the case, but it's a hard case to prove without a sort of a manifesto like we've had in the Dylan Ruth cases and other acts that have happened. But the other issue is this is a matter of investigating the prosecutors in this case. And when you're talking about potentially prosecutorial misconduct in the handling of the case, in the investigation, or in a way that was contrary to the rights of people to be able to have justice served or at least, sought after, that will be an interesting thing to discuss about whether the Justice Department, as I knew it, as a civil rights attorney that I was for the Justice Department, would have looked at a case like this and said, if there was a concerted effort by multiple prosecutors to try to cover up a crime of a former, colleague, if that's what happened, this is ripe for Justice Department review, and law enforcement out there in the world should be particularly vexed by any instance of a citizen, a civilian, trying to usurp the role of them, as opposed to calling 911 and getting properly trained police officers in the area to actually inquire and give the runner, the jogger, Ahmaud Arbery, the human being, the benefit of the doubt, the presumption of innocence, and at least the dignity of an investigation.
Well, that is just great information. I am so glad that I was able to share that legal analyzing by Laura Coates with you, because she hit on so many points that I think are important. First of all, we've been also tracking the Georgia hate crime bill, which, as I shared with you in previous shows, June 11th, our Senate will be back. And there is a pending bill. I've included that in my previous post so that you can track that bill. It is important that you get out and vote so that you have a say-so, that you are properly represented in Congress, okay? So we cannot complain about what is not happening if we don't participate so that we have the proper representation, people that understand the needs of our community and can advocate on our behalf in Congress. So that is huge. That is important. I've included that, and I will go back, and I did not have that in my notes to include in the comments today, but I'll go back. If my staff can do that, please, 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 if you are there, please include the HB 246, which is coming back to vote on June 11th. Good morning, Kim. Your comment here, and I'll just share your comment before I get to my point. Kim, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your comment. She just made a clear point. He didn't call for help or 911, simply sat there and was filming the crime. And that is where it is going to be essential, or one of the essential facts, Kim. Thank you for emphasizing her comment there, because her point is that William Roddy Bryan was complicit in the crime, and he took an active role in facilitating the crime. And that is where they are going to get the criminal attempt for the false imprisonment, because he participated in attempting to stop Ahmaud Arbery instead of calling the police and possibly getting assistance and the proper assistance to help prevent the crime. He instead assisted in the substantial completion of the crime. Ms. Coates also talked about the prosecutorial misconduct. I talked about maybe last week, maybe Tuesday, about the rules of professional responsibility and not finding a rule that the prosecutors may have violated. Instead, now the DOJ is investigating the prosecutorial misconduct because they allegedly or possibly interfered with justice. And that is a direct conflict in the very position that they hold as prosecutors. If Ms. Coates set out that if there is or if there was a concerted effort by these prosecutors to cover up a crime of a colleague, then the case is right for them to be prosecuted, for the prosecutors to be prosecuted. But this is a DOJ issue. So it is my hope that the case is fully investigated, and it appears that they are actively and in good faith investigating from all angles, the prosecutors, the police, all parties who were present, the McMichaels and Mr. Bryan, and they are not leaving any stone unturned. And that's the best we can hope for. So I am pleased with the level of investigation from all angles that is currently being conducted. I have another comment. Hello, good morning, Kelly Powell. Can a HOA install security cameras in your neighborhood? The answer to that is yes, we have one in ours. My HOA is trying to install security cameras, and their reasoning is the following. Number one, and thank you for separating your comment, people disposing of trash, keep an eye on renters. You haven't told me what your concern about this is, but I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to try to tell you. I made sure I got on the board of my HOA, and I just have to be candid because that's what this show is about. I live in a very diverse neighborhood. I am the only Black person, Black family living in this cul-de-sac. I have Indians on both sides of my home. I have another Indian family, and they are related. And then I have a Korean family, and then a white family. The board is all white males, okay? My concern with any problem that arises in my community, they tell the neighbors to call the police. We had basketball courts in my neighborhood. They took them down. They said that it was causing people to congregate. Okay, and it became very concerning on the way they were handling certain issues that came about. And so then I joined the board so that I could be a part of that conversation and be active. So Kelly, you haven't said what your concern is about what they are saying or why they are saying they want to install the cameras, but I would challenge them on their reasoning. And quite frankly, I do agree with cameras in certain areas where people are congregating because it is for your safety. It is. I do feel safer with them being installed, but you just have to make sure that you are understanding and that they are clear what the purpose of those video cameras are. But I have concerns and have had concerns since I moved into this neighborhood by the way they address certain issues and the comments that are made sometimes when the issues arise. And I have to always say, hey, I would prefer for children to be outside and playing and on the basketball court, in the swimming pool. That's where they should be. I don't think it's a concern that children hang out during the summertime. That's what they're supposed to do. Of course, their concern is that kids from other neighborhoods and other issues arise when that happens. But I just think you have to put the proper measures in place when you do that. And to keep an eye on renters, quite frankly, I don't like that. That's not what you install video cameras to do. And I think that is somewhat discrimination just because you don't own a home in a neighborhood, you should not have to be, you don't subject yourself and your family to a higher level of scrutiny because you are a renter and not an owner in a neighborhood. I have another comment, shame on Atlanta. There should be hate crimes across the nation, period. And I know that Ms. Coe said that we don't have hate crimes. We did have something similar. I shared that on one of my previous shows. We didn't have a hate crime per se. It was pretty vague, very ambiguous. So now the what is currently before our Congress to vote on is clearly a hate crime. It's very very specific in the groups that can that would qualify in terms of crimes being committed against them. And I think that it is more clear, and it will hopefully be a deterrent for biases, prejudice, and lay out what groups are protected. Kelly commented again, thank you. You answered my question. I agree. The renters being watched is a concern with me, as it should be. It's kind of just clear discrimination. I don't like that. It's always certain folk that want to discriminate against others, and it's not always a white or black thing. Sometimes it's a class thing. You just don't know. At the end of the day, it's not fair. You want to keep your rules and regulations in your HOA fair for everyone. And if you have an HOA that allows renters, you cannot impose a higher level of scrutiny on the renters. If you don't want renters, include that in your covenants. If you want a limitation on renters, include that in your covenants. But you can't install cameras just to impose, to watch them, which thereby imposes a higher level of scrutiny on your renters. Listen, I want to tell you, the conversations we have are just so interesting. Kelly, thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you and your comments. I hope that at the end of the day, the conversations that we have here are informing, are empowering, stir up conversation for you to share with your friends, with your family, and help just give you perspective on what is going on. I'm going to continue to talk about Ahmaud Arbery. I'm going to continue to bring issues that are of concern to me and people that text me, email, and make comments on Wait One Legal Minute. I'm going to continue to do this. I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday at 11 o'clock. My goal is to be here every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 o'clock, so I want to see you. Thank you all for supporting. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and thank you for joining Wait One Legal Minute.